and he was only the 5th Australian to hold that position. His Rotary theme that year was Rotary Making a Difference. Ian's honours include the AusAid Peace Builder Award from the Australian Government in recognition of his work in East Timor, the Medal of the Order of Australia for services to the Australian community, the Distinguished Service Award and Regional Service Award for a polio-free world from the Rotary Foundation. Ian is currently chair of the Rotary Foundation Environmental Issues Task Force, and no doubt Ian can share some insight on the Foundation's newest area of focus, protecting the environment. Ian and his wife Juliette are multiple Paul Harris Fellows, major donors and Bequest Society members. Please welcome Ian.
Thank you very much, Chairman Paul, President Graham, distinguished Rotarians. Yes, there was not one incorrect statement in that introduction, Paul, so thank you. Who was it who said that the internet was full of lies? It must be right, that's good. Thank you for your invitation to join you tonight. It's a pleasure, and I've been asked to talk about the Rotary Foundation and its work, and I'm of course delighted to do so as a trustee of the Rotary Foundation for the second time, and I'm also more than happy to respond to questions at the end if you have any, and if you're still awake, that's good. Let me give you a little bit of history, and forgive me because some of this might be a bit basic for some of you, but unless we understand the background to how our foundation got here, it's hard to understand how significant it is. And we know that it was formed in 1917 when the RI president at the time, a fellow with the delightful name of Arch Clumph, suggested to the Rotary world at the convention that year in Kansas City, Missouri, that they should have a fund which is for the purpose of doing good in the world. And it started with a modest sum of $26.50 US, which was the surplus they had from the RI convention that year in Kansas City. $26.50 was the start of this extravaganza. And it grew modestly for some little while. It wasn't until 1929 when they had the first grant that was made, and that was $500 to the International Society of Crippled Children. In the US, they call it Easter Seals for reasons I don't know, but it was the International Society of Crippled Children. It continued to drift. Well, not drift, but just grow very slowly until the founder of Rotary, Paul Percy Harris, died in 1947. He died a couple of months before I was born, so suddenly I'm feeling even older. And as a result of that, funds poured in tribute to Paul, and they said, what will we do with some of this money? And they awarded 18 scholarships that year. And that was the first indication that scholarships would be a significant part of what our foundation does. And over a period of years after that, the programs expanded. As well as scholarships, they started giving grants for different humanitarian things. Group study exchange was introduced. Who remembers group study exchange? I certainly do, because I think it was the foundation's one of the greatest projects of, and I was fortunate to be a team leader back in 1997, and I loved GSE, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And in 1979, a famous Queenslander, RI President Clem Renouf, he decided when he was president to have health, hunger and humanity grants, otherwise known as 3H grants. And one of those, a significant one, was the immunization of 6.3 million children in the Philippines against polio. And that was significantly successful. And as that has led to, in 1985, we started Polio Plus. Surely our greatest humanitarian program, and arguably one of the greatest humanitarian programs of all time, ever undertaken by a non-government body. And Sir Clem is, of course, famous for that. He as I'm sure you know, died at the age of 99 last year. And he is one of the genuine Rotary heroes for what he was able to do. And in fact, one of his district governors at the time, John Sever, worked in Washington on health matters. So Clem rang him and said, "We've just seen smallpox eradicated. What can Rotary do?" And John Sever thought about it for a while and came back and said, "Clem, the answer is polio." And on it's gone since there. And we are, of course, as people kept on saying, this close. It was 140 odd cases last year compared with 1,000 a day back when we started all of this. So it's special. And when polio is eradicated, and it will be, it won't be all that far from now, I'm sure. Every single Rotarian and every person who has contributed to Rotary's significant challenge of eradicating polio can shout from the rooftops with joy, because it's a wonderful thing. So the foundation continued to grow until about 9 years ago. The trustees at the time said, we have a problem. One of the problems is that we have a number of small grants being given by the Rotary Foundation, and because of our requirement for accurate stewardship, very good recording and all that sort of stuff, it cost almost as much to administer and check on the grant as the grant was worth. And so they thought, hang on, what can we do about this that's more effective? So in came what was called at the time Future Vision. We can't call it Future Vision anymore because it's no longer futurist now. It's our new grant program. So now half of the annual giving into the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation every year is under the control of the district which made the contribution. The other half goes to the World Fund for grants. And of course, the district is then empowered to make district grants if they wish, or to spend their money on supporting global grants or scholarships or polio or whatever they want to do with that. District designated fund, which is the amount that goes to the district, is relatively flexible. Around the world, it has grown to the point where carry forward district designated fund, in other words, what districts haven't spent, has grown to, well, it was at the most about $58 million. That's unspent DDF. It's progressively gone down with our urging down to in the high 40s somewhere, but it's still too much money sitting around. So that's one of the reasons we're proposing some changes. And the programs, when Future Vision was initiated, were put into what we call areas of focus. You know that there are 6 of those, but there are soon to be 7, because as Paul said in his introduction, we're about to have from the 1st of July next, a 7th area of focus called the environment, which is exciting. It's exciting for those of us who are supporters of working on the environment, and it's also responding to the demand that we've seen, because a lot of people want to do work on the environment, and up until now it hasn't been possible to do within the areas of focus. So we've created a new one, a 7th one, and we're anticipating that there will be significant demand for programs under that area of focus. If people are interested in learning more detail about our foundation, I strongly recommend to you the Learning Centre that you access via the RI website. It's got a lot of outstanding training courses and information in it, and it really is an excellent resource. So every year, the chairman of the foundation, or the incoming chairman, sets a number of goals for the year to come. And John Germ, who is going to be next year's chairman, and the way it works is after you've been president of Rotary International, you have a year off, so to speak, and then on the trustees for 4 years, and in the final year, you're normally, if you behave yourself, you're the chairman of the foundation trustees. So John will be next year. I will be the year after that. So John has set a challenging goal for fundraising, a total of $410 million. Now, if you say it quickly, it doesn't sound like much, but that's a significant amount of money. Let me give you a little bit of breakup of that. The annual giving that I mentioned earlier, which is contributions to annual giving, normally from clubs and districts and sometimes individual Rotarians, he wants that to be a target of $125 million. Polio eradication continues to be our chief humanitarian task. You know, we work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are extremely generous supporters. So if we spend $50 million, they give us another $100 million to spend. Up to 50 million, they'll give us 2 for 1. So if we spend the 50, and that's our aim, and it has been every year up until now, they'll give us 100. So that's 150 million on polio. Most of it is spent through the World Health Organization or UNICEF on particular programs. Next, the endowment fund. There are a number of endowment funds. There's the general one, and there's one for every area of focus. And he's looking to have $95 million contributed to that. The objective of endowment fund is over a period of time that builds up to the stage where all of the programs can be funded by the earnings from these endowment funds. So he has also said, he hasn't said, but it's been done for a couple of years now, that we have a target of $2.025 billion, a significant sum, by the year 2025. So 2.025 by 2025. And we're hopeful that, or John is hopeful, and I'm supporting him, that we will have 95 million contributed to the endowment funds. In addition, there's $40 million expected from direct gifts to grants and so on. That totals 410 million. That's a lot of money, but of course the demand is significant. The needs for our Rotary Foundation have never been greater than they are now. And that's why the program called Every Rotarian Every Year, it's an acronym, of course, it's Rotary, we've got to have acronyms, EREY, and it is hoped that more and more individual Rotarians will contribute to the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation, even a small amount. And so that's happening. There's also the Bequest Society, because not everyone can give funds when they're alive. There's a demand for work, etc., and assets are tied up. But often when people pass, there's the capacity for the estate to leave some money to the Rotary Foundation. That's the Bequest Society. And there's a new Legacy Society, and that's a little bit out of my league, but anyone who's prepared to commit to $1 million as a bequest, then they become members of the Legacy Society. And I'm really impressed with the fact that there's a significant number of Australians and New Zealanders who've already signed up. So that means that we're in no hurry to collect. They should live as long as they feel comfortable, but eventually we'll get $1 million from, at least from each of those estates, which is a lot. And I'm wary of time. You know that we have peace centres. The Rotary Foundation has peace centres of 2 kinds. One is the ones that provide a master's degree for 5 different universities around the world, and also a short-term certificate course, excuse me, at Chulalongkorn in Bangkok. And that's a sort of 3-month course. We've agreed to start a new one in Makerere in Uganda, and that will start in 2 years' time. And let me tell you about, and this is hot off the presses because it was agreed on Tuesday at the trustee meeting. We've received a very kind offer from an estate in the state of Maine in the USA. It's administered by 2 Rotarians, one of whom is a past district governor from the area. And what this has said is They'll give us $10 million, and that can come relatively soon. As long as we set up another certificate level peace centre named for Rotary and this individual estate. So $10 million to get it going, $500,000 in addition to do the investigation of the site as to where it will be. And the requirement is that it's somewhere in the Middle East or North Africa. And I know the trustees have been looking at that for some while anyway. As Ravi Ravindran has said to the trustees, if there's one part of the world that seems to be forever having problems with peace, it's the Middle East and North Africa. Then in about 8 years' time, 6 years' time, when this new peace centre is up and running, this trust will commit to another $5 million to be invested to make the whole thing self-funding forever. A very generous offer, and the trustees have agreed to accept that. So someone will give us $15.5 million for a Rotary Peace Centre. It's a wonderful gesture, and it does. Many of us think that our best work into the future will be in collaboration with others. We work extremely well with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There are other foundations and societies out there. They have the money, we have the programs. It's a logical fit. So we'll be doing more and more research into that area. I note that it's 20 past, so let me pause there. I'm happy to respond to any questions, but I would close by urging the Rotary Club of Mooloolaba, and for that matter, all of the members, to actively consider a contribution every year to the Rotary Foundation, because it does wonderful work, very low overheads. If you give money to any other charity, I'll guarantee you that the overhead cost is greater than the Rotary Foundation. So please make it one of your charities of choice. Okay, whoever's doing this, if it's Paul, if it's Graham, whoever's doing it, I'm happy to respond to questions.
Thank you, Ben. Paul, do you want to take that?
Yes, I can do that. Now, do we have any? You put your hand up if you've